Hi, this is Tracy with Watch Kansas, and I'm talking to Tracy today. We have Ted Davis, who is running for the Leavenworth City Commission.
Thank you, Tracy. It's a pleasure to join you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Now, we've been talking for a few minutes and kind of, some different things, and you were telling me a great story about your grandparents, and everybody I love immigrant stories. So why don't you tell us how your family came to be in America?
My maternal heritage is Italian, even though the last name is Davis. I was this my father's side, but my maternal side came from Italy. Both my grandparents were born in two little towns east of Naples, and they immigrated at the beginning of the 20th century, went through Ellis Island, and then a kind of traditional portal. And after settling, I think, in the New York City area for a period of time, just kind of get their feet on the ground, they eventually migrated up to Binghamton, New York, which is the south central part of the state, and settled on, rather than the east side where all the immigrants were, they went to the west side to be entrepreneurs.
Sure.
And so they found a house. In that house, they opened a cobbler shop. My grandfather made shoes. He just didn't repair them. He made shoes from scratch.
And even then, that was a lost art.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah, it really is. And then my grandmother was a seamstress, so she would make dresses from scratch. And so they had pretty successful business. They had a total of 9 kids. Unfortunately, they lost 2 of them. One boy died in birth or shortly thereafter. One little girl at 4 was hit by a car. My mother was the last of 9, and unfortunately my grandfather died while she was a baby, so she never knew him, and all I know is, of course, the stories. But the family stuck together. My grandmother got into the dry cleaning business, bought a bunch of properties that clustered together, so there was this intersection of about 5 corners, as one of the Ressinettis lived on one of those corners. And so it was a neat, tight-knit family, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Italian food.
And you were telling me that you're a good Italian cook too. Why don't you tell us your specialties?
Oh my gosh! Well, I make great red sauce. I got it from the masters. Between my mother and my aunt, phenomenal cooks. They taught me, my sisters. I'm not sure my 2 youngest brothers ever learned, but I have 2 brothers, one 19 years younger and one 21 years younger. So it's totally separate generation almost. But they passed on the cooking secrets and skills. No measuring, folks. Your measuring scoop, your cup, your whatever is the palm of your hand. How much does fit in this palm of your hand? Palm of this, half, and that's how I did it. And particularly how I do it today. When I had oregano, so I put the oregano, and then I grind it up so it's real fine and put it in there. So wonderful tips on how to make that stuff. It was wonderful.
I always look at a recipe as a mild suggestion.
Yes.
I like to pull them out of the cabinet and, use the written recipes and such, but except for one cookie recipe I've got, which has to be exact where nothing comes out. Recipes are just a suggestion. You've got to kind of go along as you go.
That's if you decide to use a recipe.
Yeah.
The difference between my wife and I, my wife Denny and I, happily married for 45 years, she has to have a recipe for something new. And she does a great job, but she has to have I go to the pantry, open up, okay, what's here? I'll try this, I'll try that, go to the refrigerator, get this, and then I'll just whip something up together. And I'd say at least 85-90%. It turns out pretty good. But I like to be creative in the kitchen, and it all comes from my Italian heritage, which is a great heritage. I'm so proud of the family I came from. And I'm very proud of the family I have with my 3 kids, my 2 sons and my daughter. Phenomenal, wonderful people. All 3 of them married exceptionally well. My son-in-law, my 2 daughters-in-law are just wonderful, wonderful people. And so together, between the 3 couples, they've given Denny and I 7 grandkids.
That keeps you busy.
So, well, I wish it was.
Oh, they all over?
Yeah, the oldest, my son Jeremy, and his wife and kids are down in Houston. He had a job there with the oil and gas industry for a while. My son-in-law works as a law enforcement agent for Health and Human Services in Little Rock. So Jenny and her husband and 2 kids live outside of Little Rock. And my youngest son, John, and his wife are down in Overland Park. So we get to see them.
So they're close.
They're 2 kids.
Yeah.
So
That's not very far. I go back and forth between here and Overland Park and Olathe in the course of a day a lot of times with politics.
Uh,
Now, and you're also part of a much larger family.
well, yeah, I had 4 sisters,
I mean,
2 brothers. What are
you
talking
retired
about?
military.
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely.
Is-
Wonderful. I had
That's a
22
huge
years.
family.
Yeah, tremendous, absolutely. So I was very blessed, very incredibly blessed. If you ask anybody who knows me for any long, pretty soon I'm going to say my favorite quote. If I was 18, had to do it all over again, I'd still go to West Point. I'd make the Army my first career, and I'd marry the same woman. So it's just testimony to the fact that I've been incredibly blessed.
Without a
And
doubt.
my 22 years on active duty, loved every minute of it. Again, I'd go back and do it again. Here it is 25 years later after I retired, and I still miss it. I still I miss being with soldiers. It was a wonderful privilege to be around soldiers, to lead soldiers. It was great culture serving the country. So I think that selfless service, which one, I think I got it from my family of origin.
Sure.
Both on my father's side of the family and on my mother's side of the family, long history of service to the country. My father, his father, had been in the Army at one point in time. My mother's side, they either fought in World War II or Korea. My nieces and nephew, I've had several nephews in the Marine Corps. My sisters, 2 of them served on active duty. My younger 2 brothers, they both graduated from West Point and served on active duty for a while.
Awesome.
My oldest son graduated. So it's been part of our family to be part of service to our country. And so I felt like, okay, it's time to serve Leavenworth specifically. It's now my adopted hometown. And I love the city. I think we've got wonderful people, wonderful place. I was fortunate to raise my kids, at least in their teen years, here in Leavenworth. So I thought it was time to get involved. I liked what I see. Got to know Paul Kramer a little bit, so that gave me more interest in city government. I think he's an excellent city manager and a good guy. And so I thought, okay, let's see what we can do and let's run for office. So that's why I'm running for city commission. I just want to be able to serve.
Excellent. And I think, because of the nature of Leavenworth, that it is a military
Yes.
town, most people are either retired military, in the military, their family is military, they have a job on base as a civilian, all their friends are military. It's really kind of hard not to have a military mindset in Leavenworth. Just the whole makeup of Leavenworth is so different than any other city I've ever hung out in.
It is, and it's
Even
incredible.
even other military cities, because most military cities are much bigger than Leavenworth that I've been to.
They are, and they usually have a tactical unit. Like you go to Fort Bragg, you
Yeah.
got the 82nd Airborne, you go to Fort Hood, you got an armored division there and so forth. Well, here, the only tactical unit we have, I think, are the military police. But with the college, it gives us a unique, not only the college, but all the other support activities with the research, the doctrine writing, and war gaming and so forth. So it's an incredible post, and we attract so many good people. Right? One of the things when I came here in 1992, it was a critical point in my career, and I kind of figured out, okay, I got one more assignment. What do I want to do? What's the best thing I can do to serve the Army? What's the last great thing I can do? Because I knew I only had one assignment left. And as I thought about it, I thought, well, I got to teach.
Sure.
So I go to Woodland. And I'd been here when I was a young captain. I was in the very first, I don't know if you ever heard the term CASQ, the Combined Arms Service and Staff College.
Okay.
CASQ, or school. It's C-triple-S or something. Anyway, so I was in the very first class. This is in about, I was in Korea from, when was it? Korea, 86 to 87. Okay, so this is about 87 time frame. And so I got here, and I was here for 12 weeks. Denny and the kids stayed in Colorado Springs. My father-in-law, unfortunately, was dying of cancer, so she stayed to help care for him and the family. So I got here, and I just fell in love with the area. I fell in love with Leavenworth, fell in love with Kansas City. It was just a wonderful experience. So when it came time to say, okay, where do I want to go? What's the last great thing I can do to serve the Army and serve the men and women was teach. Teach is the last thing. And so I got here and I taught for 4 years, wonderful years. I cherish every minute of it. And I got to use the education. While I was on active duty, I got a master's degree in systems management and a master's degree in international relations. So I came here to teach, and it was wonderful. And I have a love of learning, and so I got to fulfill that. And it set me up well for, obviously, what I did in my civilian career now as a leadership consultant, coach, and trainer, which has been a wonderful 23 years. And plus, it's a great place to stay to work on my doctorate. So from 2015 to 2019, for 4 years, in my mid-60s, I'm working on the doctorate, which was great fun. But the point of the whole thing is, Leavenworth became special, and then I said, what can I do? Let me go back to Leavenworth, which was wonderful. And then, okay, I gotta stay here. Why? Because this is gonna be a good opportunity for the kids. The good schools between Leavenworth and then on Post and so forth will transition here. Little did I know the job that I had when I first retired would go away quickly. But still, we were here. It was then, is now. A great place. I have no regrets. Recently on Facebook, I've seen, for some reason, I did a string of these where it's videos of kids going to an adoptive parent. The adoption hasn't been completed.
Yeah.
So they've been with a parent, a mother or a father. I think most of them are male. And they've been with them for, they started when they're like 3 years old, now they're 13, they're 23, whatever. And they say, wow, will you adopt me? And they're incredible videos.
Oh, yeah.
It's very compelling. And it just struck me, that's kind of, Leavenworth didn't reach out and say, hey,
I know,
be here.
but yeah, same
But I
same feeling.
I have that sense of, well, I'm a doctor. And when I retired in '96, my family kept saying, oh, come back to Binghamton, come back to Binghamton with the family. And my standard answer was, I will not live in a state that has Hillary Clinton and Chuck Schumer for senators. That just isn't going to happen. And I didn't. And so the best opportunities were here. So we've stayed and thoroughly enjoyed living here and now want to serve in a new capacity.
Now, everything in Leavenworth isn't rosy.
No.
I know two of the biggest issues that I'm not just talking from you,
Right.
but talking to a multitude of other people here in Leavenworth, is generational poverty and homelessness. I know that most people in Leavenworth are middle class with decent jobs. There's a lot of job opportunity here, but we've got a sector of the population that isn't making it.
It isn't, and I don't think it's as widely known. I certainly didn't realize the magnitude of the problem here in Leavenworth, because unless you go looking for it, it's not. I mean, here we are sitting in this park. We don't see a campsite set up. We don't see the elements that many other cities have that they can look at, and oh my gosh, there's a huge homeless problem. So we don't have that. I was, and as I mentioned, I worked on my doctorate just as I started, because of my church, I got a Westside Family Church Leavenworth, but before we launched Leavenworth site, I was going to Westside Leavenworth, Westside Family Church down in the next side.
Yeah.
And the community impact pastor asked me to get involved with a ministry in Kansas City called Avenue with Life. Matt Adams.
Matt Adams is a good guy. I've worked with him in projects.
Yeah, good guy. So he got me, and then Denny joined me, and we've been working as volunteers with my wife, and that's where I started learning about poverty. So as I started that, then I got into my doctoral program, and one of the things I had to do is, of course, write a dissertation, or we call it a final project. And so there's two things. Number one is I'm learning more about poverty than I ever thought I would. It was not just simply poverty, it's generational poverty, the most pressing, complex form of poverty there is. Because unfortunately, what happens from generation to generation, skills are taught how to survive, not how to thrive. Skills are taught, how do I get through today? You don't have to worry about tomorrow. just got to get through today. A sense of hopelessness oftentimes is extinguished. And so generational poverty became very important to me because I was working in a volunteer organization. And again, I wasn't aware of how much there was here in Leavenworth because physically I don't think I wasn't out there looking for it. But it is here, as I've come to learn. So anyway, I started my program, and it was, I really felt like, okay, the Lord's leading me into this direction. The Lord's led me to Regent University to do this. So what do? Well, in the midst of the course, I was reading a phenomenal article this guy wrote about poverty in South Africa. And he referred to this title I'd never heard before called Integrative Public Leadership. Never heard of that. What is this? So I traced it down. And a marvelous leadership model that focuses on complex, ongoing, perpetual community problems. How do you do that? So integrative public leadership is how do you bring leaders, private, public, for-profit, not-for-profit, government, non-government, how do you bring all of them together in effective coalitions to do that? So I wrote my doctoral dissertation on how to break the cycle of generational poverty using integrative public leadership. Wow, that was certainly a long one.
Oh yeah, thanks Kansas. We had to take a little break there so that way we could watch the train go by. We're down, in case you haven't noticed, I know people from Leavenworth will notice, we're right by the river at the park in Leavenworth. Is Riverfront Park? So
Land's End or
Land's End?
Landings.
Yeah, beautiful park. Okay, so we can go back to talking about generational poverty.
Yeah, so we're talking about generational poverty, which is an extreme form of poverty because it's passed from generation to generation. The skill set, the attitudes, the perspective, the worldview of how you survive, not thrive, but survive, gets passed on, unfortunately. And so coming with that is, of course, homelessness oftentimes. So they do tend to overlap and be both present at the same time. And so as I was researching and wrote my final dissertation on it, what I found was it is not about a job. You cannot end generational poverty by just simply giving a person a job. Because unfortunately, if I just simply give you a job, what is your worldview about a job? What is your worldview about being responsible, about showing up on time, about having a budget? There's so many things that you and I, as kind of middle class people, we come from what's called a print culture. People in generational poverty, they come from a verbal culture. They communicate totally verbally, which makes them incredibly empathetic, by the way. They are not without skills. They are not without strengths. They just have to learn how to leverage those. But then they've got to adopt, whether you like it or not, a middle-class lifestyle in the United States, or upper class. Not that it's totally virtuous, but it is the most widely used. It is the one where most people are going to make a living. Well, how do
it's
we...
substantially more comfortable.
Pardon? Yeah, absolutely. So how do we help people acquire those skills? Well, it takes a long time. So yes, we can give them a job, but then where's the coaching to help them learn how to transition into middle-class culture, if you will? So you cannot separate everything else they need. So that yes, they need a job, but to get to the job, they need reliable transportation. To get the skills to have that job, there needs to be quality education. Oftentimes, to make sure that they're healthy enough, they need quality health care, and they need access to places of healthy foods. So often, so many people who are locked in generational poverty, what do they have down the corner? They have a 7-Eleven, not knocking 7-Eleven, but that ain't where you're going to get a lot of good, healthy fruits and vegetables. All you get is processed food, and when you eat that all the time, you're going to have lingering health problems. The other thing about generational poverty is it's often located, or it attracts, obviously, violence. And studies have shown time and time again, young people, children who are growing up in this surroundings of violence, not only violence within their home, their family, but around their neighborhood. And so when they're exposed to what's called adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, those, you compound those, and as few as 4 ACEs in a young person's life will have lifelong problems. 50 years later, they're still affected by the trauma of what happened as a youth. So, okay, we're going to get over generational poverty. You're going to be prepared to deal with housing, health care, nutrition, quality education. You're going to be able to provide the counseling. And it's such a complex issue because what we need to be able to deal with it is, I said, coalitions. And we've had stalwarts like Sister Vicky working on this for years. Now Miranda Agnew's taken over her position there at the Interfaith Community Center. But
that's normally something that places like with Matt works with sometimes with like Hillcrest Transitional Housing.
Yes.
I've worked with them for a short period of time with their youth facility when they're opening it, and they have a fairly decent success rate.
They do, but again, are they dealing with situational poverty or generational poverty? And the thing about generational poverty, we've got to be able to, and when I wrote my dissertation, there's 2 levels. Here's what we have to do as society to provide accessible, affordable, available housing. But then all the other services, where is, again, as I said, the education, healthcare, and so forth. So there's things that we have to do structurally within the society. Compounded or companion with that, simultaneously, where is the coaching, the uplifting, how do we lift people up? So again, they're acquiring the skills how to do that. So you've got to be able to do both of those simultaneously. And by using integrative public leadership, again, you have coalitions, but you need, to have a good coalition, you've got to have, it's called a model called community impact. It's got 5 parts to it. Number 1, you've got to have a clear, shared vision, mission and vision, what we're trying to do. You've got to have shared objectives, what we're trying to accomplish. You have to assign responsibilities. You have to have continuous communication among those. And that's pretty standard, I think, for long-term solving. But the key to this model is a backbone agency. Who is the agency that's going to provide the structure, the accountability, the support to everybody else who comes together? And so now that I'm going to try to be involved here, I'll be involved even if I'm not elected. I learned in Kansas City, but now I want to be able to apply it here, particularly since I know Miranda. That's what we need to bring. How do we bring that project together?
So what are your thought processes? How would you pull something like that into Leavenworth?
Well, I build on what's here. I don't like to recreate or think that what's come before is meaningless. Let's sweep it under the carpet. No. I know, although I don't know her personally, Sister Vicky is a legend here. I know she's done the yeoman's work. I think you build on that. I think Paul Kramer, the city manager, I know he's been supportive of this stuff. So I think what we've got to be able to do is what has taken place, how can we energize it to another level, whatever I can do. And I think to be able to engage the business community. Is an integrative public leadership, private and public, for-profit, not-for-profit. And I know there's a lot of charitable businesses here in town. And so I think...
My understanding is that the most charitable thing most of the businesses have been trying to do have been hire the people so they can at least have a job, and that's not been particularly effective recently.
Well, again, recently, because of, obviously, one of the challenges is, attracting people to work when they can make better living that way. But again, I go back to that. Simply hiring them is not enough. What is the support? Have they been taught how to, again, they're not bad people. Some middle-class young people haven't learned how to be responsible.
Sure.
And they're irresponsible. So it's a matter of looking at their total situation. Yes, I provide you a job, but what do you know about what to do with that income? What do you know about, I make money, I get money on Tuesday. And unfortunately, when you're taught, I've got to thrive or survive today, I got $200 today, I'm going to use it today, forget that I got $100 rent payment on Friday. Well, that's Friday. That's Friday. It's the future. There's no cognition that it's not because they're bad people. Not at all. It's just, unfortunately, they were trained. So, again, if we simply provide a job, it'll be insufficient because we've got to make sure there's a support system. And the other thing, many of the people, unfortunately, in generational poverty, and I always want to emphasize, I'm talking specifically about generational poverty, they become critics of education. It's never worked for anybody else. My sister tried this, that. They see the failure of others. Education didn't work, so why do I think it's going to work for me? They were trying to get a job, it didn't work, why should I try to do it? So they see failure, and natural human condition, I take that on. Well, again, let me give you a job, but I gotta look at your total situation. Now, our business is here. God love them. They're there obviously to provide an economic benefit, and if they're going to reach out and support this by providing jobs, where's the network to help them in all these other areas, so that in some cases they can overcome the criticism they're going to get from their family. I saw that when I was working with Evan's Life down in Tennessee. Here's this young man that was working within the center. Hard working, industrious. I loved the guy. He was just incredible. The ridicule he got from his family because he was working in this job. And so they attacked him on a racial basis, economic basis, and so forth. What makes you better than us, and so forth. They tried to sabotage him. They would go behind his back and steal things. So unfortunately, as they're trying to break this cycle, so we have to do support, assist as a society, but we also have to help the individual learn those skills. And one of the obstacles they have sometimes is that culture itself, because it wants to, well, if you do it, that means I'm wrong, and that social comparison theory just unfortunately locks people in. So I've been talking quite a bit about this because it is an incredibly complex issue, and simply providing a house, simply providing a job are not the sole activities that will solve the problem. It is far more complex than that.
But with that, as a commissioner, how would you juggle that?
Well, I would try to obviously get involved with the coalitions, and I try to be a resource to
as a commissioner or as a citizen?
Well, I think being a commissioner gives you a platform to be able to speak on, speak out, to be a part of it. So I think if I was, in answer to your question, even if I'm not elected, I want to get involved. So even as a private citizen, there's two things I want to be involved in, privately, if not as a commissioner, and that's dealing with the generational poverty, homeless issues. So I definitely want to continue, regardless of how the election turns out. But then secondly, economic development for this area. I think that's critically important. I've heard an awful lot in this campaign. A lot of folks are talking, we've got to get cut taxes, we've got to spark economic development, and we go down the street here, as we look down, we go up one by Cherokee, as we go down Cherokee, I've been to Bandside, I've been to Parma Cakes, I've been to Luigi's, I've been to all of them.
Z&M, you can't forget Z&M.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been to all of them, and if another one's open, I will be there. My waistline proves that I am a connoisseur of good food. But it's going to take more than just a shop or a restaurant down the streets here. What we have to be able to do is attract new industries, new business. There's a wonderful book. It's kind of a guide for me in this. It's called World Class by Rosebeth Cantor. She wrote it about 30 years ago. And in it, she talks about 3 types of world-class cities. A maker city is like a Detroit. They deal in skills of manufacturing, of producing, bringing things together. And so not only do they have like the Ford plant, the Chevy, the General Motors plants and so forth, but then they have all the infrastructure that goes with it for that manufacturing. That's not going to be us. It's not going to be us because, one, we don't have enough land left for large manufacturing facilities. Number 2, with our current transportation network, that ain't going to happen. So we're not going to be a maker city. The second is a trader city, and a trader city works with connections. So even though we had a train ride pass through here a second ago, what did it do? it passed through. It didn't stop.
Sure.
Whereas Kansas City, that's a
Stopped.
connector. Yeah, it stopped. It's a trader. It's a place where stuff not only passes through, but it gets connected. So you've got the transportation networks like Kansas City, but then you've also got banking centers like Miami is for Latin America, New York City, London, all these other places, which are world-class trader cities. The third one, which is what I think we can do, and that's what's called a thinker city. We deal with concepts, we deal with ideas, we deal with research. So we've got to be able to attract and hold either research cities, centers of excellence. About 7-8 years ago, there was a committee called the 27 Committee, and I think they did marvelous work. Unfortunately, it didn't prosper. Guys like Jerry Riley were helping to get it off the ground. A couple of my friends, Bob Hewland and Raleigh Desert, they were really working hard. Bob Gibson, another guy, really smart people. And they were kind of tackling this issue. And one of the things they were proposing, and I think we ought to revisit it, is this idea of centers of excellence. So we have industry here where people come to talk about, to have conferences, to research, to brainstorm, to test, to develop around whatever topic. One was recommended back then, law enforcement, particularly confinement facilities. When we got 6 of them here, why aren't these laboratories where we figure out what's best and they become a center where people can look for new ideas, what's the best practices, where's the doctrine for these things to emerge.
Do you have space here to hold conferences?
Pardon?
Do you have space here to hold
Well, I think
conferences?
I think we've got some. I think with the new hotels, I think that one's can be solved, both because I don't see us being a national thinker city right away. I think it's going to be a regional thing.
Looks like
another
we
rail-
got just a couple minutes to wrap this up. So do you have a last 10 seconds for Kansas?
Well, so I think you wanted to wrap up, right?
Yeah, I think we've covered this pretty well. Do you have any wrap-ups on this?
Well, I'll leave you with my 2 themes.
Okay, yeah.
One theme is city-focused stewardship. Now, a steward manages the property, the resources, the riches of somebody else to that owner's business. So you've got to manage the cities, the Leavenworth city's resources. It's money, it's physical properties and stuff. Manage it for the benefit of Leavenworth, for everybody. So that's my one focus, is how do we manage our resources effectively for the benefit of everybody, so we have more parks like this. Maybe divert these rails someplace else besides the
Oh
park.
no, this is perfect for the park and the railroad go perfect together. But you can have other ones that don't have
Yeah,
that.
don't have that, absolutely. So
Railroad
that's number
thing.
one. But I think the other thing that we've got to focus on is we've got to accentuate the positive. There are a lot of good things. I mean, we're sitting in one of the good things of
We got a town.
Leavenworth in here. So we've got to accentuate. We've got good spaces. We've got good people. We've got a good form of government. We've got a lot of advantages to us. Even our location is both an advantage and a disadvantage, I think. But we've got to accentuate the positive. Number 2, we've got to accept the challenges. The challenges of moving into the mid-21st century. How do we be technologically innovative? How do we conquer some of these issues, which is the third part? We've got to fix, obviously, the problem. So that's just simply the homeless problem, not simply the generational, but the highways, particularly trying to get a replacement bridge here in the north, finding another on the south. And I think one of the challenges, going back to that aspect, 2 things. One, I really think that it's not just Leavenworth, but it's Leavenworth County, it's Basehor, Townsend, obviously Lansing, all. We got to work together. We've got to find a way to work together and not this divisiveness that I think a lot of people are criticizing. What is good for one is going to be in some way good for the other. So we've got to really look at the level of unity, I think, in our community. And the other one that really, near term, that really scares me is our response to what we're into already, the inflation. The inflation that the Biden administration has caused and is going to perpetuate. I don't know how long this is going to last. I'm not sure any economist can really tell us.
I know with Leavenworth, we usually come up here and from Kansas City. We come up here and eat a lot and that sort of thing. We predominantly eat, restaurants and things like that. But we completely stopped when they started masking.
Oh well. That's
So if we're gonna, so if just as an FYI, if you guys decide to mask for Delta, there's other places. There's other places to eat.
Yeah.
I'll even go back to cooking if I have to.
I'll come.
Oh, that's even better.
But the problem with this idea of mandatory masking, we're asked that we were told the wrong solution because they were asking the wrong question. The question was, how do we save lives? Which is good, and I want to do that. But the question should have been, how do I save lives and support economies, protect people, and cause people to come up? So I was asked the other day what would have been my solution. Number one, you clarify the decision criteria. Save lives, stop the spread, and protect the economy, help people prosper, protect civil rights, minimize the second, third order effect, and try to make it nonpartisan. That last part may never happen. But particularly, you gotta.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that part.
Yeah, really, absolutely. But particularly, you gotta, and this is where I think it's key in your decision making. You gotta minimize second and third order effect. What nobody looked at, what was going to be the effect on these kids, and we robbed them of a year. So you've got to. And who did they bring together? They brought virologists. They didn't bring economists. They didn't bring historians who can tell us what will work, what's worked in the past, what will work in the future, perhaps. But you need good historians, you need economists, you need educators, you need sociologists who will look at how does a society evolve. What's this going to do? I mean, we are forever changed for that. The COVID world is, the workplace is going to be different, so forth. Well, we needed to do a better job of anticipating the second and third order effect so that we make a better, it's a fool's choice when I give you only two options, mask or kill people. Whoa, there's got to be something other than that. But we weren't asking the right questions, so we could never find, there was no good guidance to direct us to better solutions. So if we've got to deal with another wave, I would hope that locally as well as nationally, we have better decision-making criteria and not be locked into a fool's choice. We look, yes, we want to save lives, and in the process, I don't want to set up a generation. I mentioned that the term adverse childhood experiences. I don't want to set up these kids with an adverse childhood experience that they have in schools because of masks. They're mandated. It's ridiculous. It is.
It's
and we've got to limit it. So we are absolutely having long-term impact because I think our leaders have not asked the right questions. So for me, a mask mandate, no. Now, do we inform people? Absolutely. Would I encourage it? Absolutely.
And I do. When we had no place to hold events last year, I held it at my house. Everybody knows that. It's common knowledge. And at one point in time, we had 90 of our closest political allies in my yard. I've got space, and nobody caught it at any of our events because if you were sick, I'm not saying you can't be sick and not realize it yet,
right.
But if you were sick, you stayed home. I was continually getting messages before an event. Hey, not feeling good, kind of tired. I'm gonna take a nap instead. Thank you, please nap. When we caught it, there wasn't any of this going out to Walmart and spinning it around. I didn't want to get up off my couch. Truth.
Yeah, I had it too.
Yeah, and so was you really tired?
Oh my gosh, that was the worst part.
Yeah.
I got over the fever, I got off the coast, sneeze, I got over that rather quickly. It was the lethargy that leaned it up. And the other fascinating thing is, well, I had it. By the time I found out, I mean, Denny and I had not separated, not lived differently. None of that had happened, nor was it going to happen. She never had a single symptom.
Yeah.
Last May, I went back to New York to visit some family and friends. And so we thought, okay, we're going to New York. I don't know what they're doing any longer, so let's have the test just in case. We'll have a piece of paper. I've been tested, and I'm negative. We were both negative. So I've obviously got the natural immunities because I had it. She, for whatever reason, never picked up a bit of it.
And nobody knows.
Yeah, absolutely. So.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And this is Tracy and Ted on Talking to Tracy on Watch Kansas.
Thank you so much.